Howzit Bru? What a fantastic game between New Zealand All Blacks and Ireland. And I must admit, right, huge congrats to New Zealand. It's not easy to go to Lansdowne Road and win. Or what am I saying? Lansdowne Road, the Viva Stadium, Dublin, same thing, right? I love that old Lansdowne Road Stadium. It's not easy to go there and win, and in fact, that's the biggest winning margin for the past five years that Ireland have suffered at home. It's their first loss after going on a 19 game winning streak at home. So phenomenal performance by the All Blacks. But anyway, if you're new here, my name's Kenneth. Welcome to Rugby Bru. And I'd love you to subscribe if you haven't already and jump in and share your thoughts on the game in the comments. We welcome that discussion or those discussions. And remember, we try to create a good vibe here. It's not one of those places like Twitter where we're slagging each other off and being a bunch of douchebags or numbnuts, right? Anyway, straight into the game. And I must admit, to me, this was the best performance by this All Blacks team. And I have to say, they are the real deal. They are coming of age. We saw how tough it was to beat them in South Africa. And like I've said in the past, they could have won both of those test matches. They had the hiccup against Argentina at home, lost that test match, and lost those two in South Africa. Number of criticisms around the team, selections, substitutions, etc. But what we're starting to see now, we're starting to see this team come together. We're seeing a little bit more depth in terms of their players, and to think that they still have the ability to choose guys like Richie Mo'unga, um, Shannon Frizzell. They can even go for old Brody Retallick if they wanted to. So there's quite a lot of depth in that team. And there was a lot of talk about Super Rugby not producing international rugby players anymore, forwards, etc. And myself, I've been critical in terms of the way that they've been playing, kicking, and mainly around the shape of their attack, etc. All of those were laid to rest tonight because this win, but 23 points to 13, 10-point winning margin. A difficult night, difficult conditions for both teams. Both teams made a heck of a lot of mistakes. This win was built on the back of the New Zealand forwards, and that allowed Damian McKenzie to have a phenomenal game, even though he made a bunch of mistakes in the beginning, drop ball, but that was across the park. But to me, Damian McKenzie was man of the match, player of the match, however you want to say it. But to me, the New Zealand pack was the performer or the player of the match as a collective. Ireland just couldn't get into the game. They struggled to fire a shot. They struggled with the territory. I think it was 58, 41% territory to New Zealand possession. Sorry, to New Zealand. 58-42, sorry, and then the territory was 50%, 50-50. New Zealand had more runs, they had more carries, they won the collisions, they had more gain line success, everything, and that was based off their forwards. Ireland are really good in terms of the speed of the breakdown. And remember my prediction, I actually gave the Irish pack the edge in the front five. In the front row and the loose forwards. And today, New Zealand's pack, their loose forwards, beat them to the breakdown, quicker than them at the breakdown, and that resulted in Ireland conceding 13 penalties from various infringements. But that comes off the back of more poor discipline from pressure and losing that battle at the breakdown. And that's what all teams want to do. They want to slow New Zealand down at that breakdown so that they don't get the speed of the ball and then unleash their backs. Now, despite the dominance by New Zealand in the first half in terms of territory and possession, went into the break, Ireland were 9-6 down. And they could have actually had a shot there to basically either score a try or score some more points there. They weren't out of that game, and it was actually pretty crazy to think, hey, this team's been dominated by New Zealand in terms of the physicality and the forward pack, and making lots of mistakes, but they're still right within this game. And with the conditions, it's one of those. I thought it would be one of those things where it's just a knock on loose ball, somebody picks it up, grubbers it ahead, whatever, and a game over. And then that second half starts. Ireland score in the 42nd minute. I think, hey, they 13-9 up. Like, hey, what's going on here? They're gonna kick on from here. Maybe they'd learnt those lessons at halftime about the discipline, etc. And then when New Zealand changed their pack, I thought, okay, Ireland are going to have the front row, the dominance in the front row now. But Tosi and Tuangafasi, great games. Certainly no drop off there in power in terms of what they brought from the starting front row. And Amur at hooker has done a fantastic job in these two Northern Hemisphere games. Ireland did very well at causing chaos with Cortez Rotima. Even though they were losing the breakdown, he was still getting scrappy ball. They caught him. He's a little bit slow off the base of that ruck, and they caught him. He made about 4 mistakes, and he didn't have a great night. And actually said to my brother, who's visiting at the moment, and I said to him, I said, they need to take off their scrum half. They did, which I thought was fantastic, and that never happened again when Cam Roygaard came on. And when Cam Roygaard came on, he wasn't any flashes of brilliance, and he snaps, and that's what he's known for. But he got that back line going, and then all of a sudden, New Zealand were just, had more shape, more structure, more attack, less errors. And, you thought, hey, these guys are going to score any minute again. But Ireland also had their chances to score. They fought back pretty well at certain stages. When they got the ball, they were starved of that possession. When they got that ball, they had some direct running. But at the end of the day, just too many mistakes, too many penalties, and you're not going to beat New Zealand like that. And like I said, it's sometimes you just got to give props to the team, right? It's the same as when Ireland beat South Africa in that second test in Durban. We could be like whining and, you know what, we deserve to. No, you didn't deserve to win that game because you didn't. And when a guy like Frawley comes along and he had those chances, and boom, he got his drop goals. They won it fair and square. So you got to sometimes just respect that team. We went down to Argentina and we got our backsides handed to us this year in the rugby championships. And sometimes you just got to applaud that team and say, well done. And I think there was definitely that that sort of mentality is sort of required today, because New Zealand were really good, and you've got to give them their props. You've got to give them their dues. They struggled with this coach and the new structures and the new systems and everything, and they've done damn well, because it's not easy to go to this Northern Hemisphere in those tricky conditions, and they still got some young players that really stood up. Ireland, on the other hand, this is their first game back, right? They haven't really played since that test match, the second test in South Africa. What was that, June, July? I actually can't even remember. So it's been a while. New Zealand now have been, smashing away the whole rugby championship. They had the game against Japan. They had the game against England. So they're in their stride, and Robertson hasn't been making a lot of changes. So, like I said, this was their best performance. So let's look at some of the statistics here. Is New Zealand 459 meters made, Ireland 202, defenders beaten 30 for the All Blacks, 14 for Ireland, and clean breaks 9 versus 1, right? And that's where Ireland are normally so accurate with with their structure of their background, the accuracy of their attack, how they do the loops around, always creating that extra man. And when Geordie Barrett was yellow carded, I thought, okay, yeah, because they started to get momentum. And again, that's where you got to credit the All Blacks, because down to 13 men, they did well to defend right on their line. Turnover, line out, turnover, scrum, penalty here. Maybe a little bit of ill discipline from Ireland. So just let's look at some stats quickly. Meters made by New Zealand, 459 versus 202 for Ireland. Defenders beaten 30 versus 14, so a lot of defenders beaten by the All Blacks. Clean breaks 9 versus 1, massive, massive. And then we see the gain line carries and then the passes. The interesting thing is, despite all the carries by New Zealand, despite the possession dominance, they didn't have that dominance in the passing, which is very unusual for New Zealand teams. We started seeing it happen more and more in the second half. And that's been one of the things or one of the characteristics of Scott Robinson's games. Not so much of those pop, 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 pop passes that New Zealand's always well known for, which eventually ends up scoring in the corner. So you could see Ireland was trying to do that with 124 versus 161, but they just made too many errors. And again, nature of the competition, conditions, etc., was a big factor in that. Offloads, this is the big thing for New Zealand. So the clean breaks and the offloads, right? 10 versus 4. So significant. And so that aspect of that New Zealand game is coming in. And I saw those training videos with Razor, and that's what he's been working on, those offloads, earning the offload. And so the other thing for me is kicks from hand run about the same, 27-23, but rucks 192-58. But the key statistics for me is that also impeded Ireland was their line-out success, right? They only had a 70% line-out success, so that set piece just wasn't there, which you needed, especially when you're in those red zones and close to the scoring areas for New Zealand, and their tackle success rate only being 80% versus 86 for New Zealand. So they actually dropped off quite a few tackles. And just on an individual basis, if you look at the individual stats for the players, is for the Irish team is the guy who made the most meters, James Lowe, had a great game. Just this may sound a little bit negative. Under 10 points down, 72nd minute, he has a phenomenal kick. And there he is nodding his head to the crowd. Bro, you don't need to do that. I know you fight up. You're 10 points down. You got 8 minutes. Like, G up your teammates, like, but just get on with it, right? You don't need to be posing for the crowd. Like, there's a lot of NFL kind of stuff that coming into rugby. But anyway, again, that may sound negative, but maybe I'm just old school again, in terms of rugby. But he made the most meters again. Such a great player, Jamison Gibson Park. What a player. Bundi Aki, same thing. Gary Ringrose, what a beast. Nice hit on Yaoni. And by the way, that whole haka, everything was just great to see. And I'm glad the teams can challenge. But again, James Lowe, defenders beaten, 4 meters carried, 49 carries. So he was the standout player for Ireland. Then you look at New Zealand, right? I'm grabbing my phone here so I can read a lot closer. But Wallace Atiti, again, very, very good game. He was watched, but still 4 defenders beaten, right? He's the guy making the offloads. And then again, Cortez Rotima, despite him not having a great game, 4 defenders beaten. And then Mackenzie, 90 meters, 6 defenders beaten. Caleb Clark, you thought was kept quiet, 4 defenders beaten, 43 meters. Geordie Barrett, 3 defenders beaten. And so if you look at all those cumulative, that's what stacked up. That's what causes the penalties, is because you keep getting beaten on defense, and then your defense is scrambling. You're under pressure, and you feel like the All Blacks are coming. So it's not just ill discipline because the guys didn't show up. Ireland are a very, very good team. They're number 1 team in the world. I mean, they don't lose games very often, and they don't lose games at home, as for the last 20 games, right? So that's where you've really got to give props to New Zealand, right? It wasn't one of these humdingers back and forth kind of games, but a real humdinger. Great basics, great fundamentals from New Zealand, and lots for them to look forward. And Ireland, they'll be back without a doubt. They're a quality team. The only thing that I think could be an issue for Ireland is the disruption when Farrell goes to coach the Lions. So it'll be interesting to see. And I don't know. I'm led to believe that only happens after the Six Nations. So anyway, phenomenal performance again, in my opinion, by the All Blacks forwards. I'd love for you guys to share your thoughts. Now, All Blacks 3 out of 3. What a pleasure. And the pressure's off now because they only got Italy and France only. No disrespect, but they could, if they beat France, this is one of the most successful tours ever. So Ireland, number 1 team in the world. They've now lost 3 this year. England, South Africa, and New Zealand. New Zealand could move to number 1 in the world if the Scots scores an upset with the Boks. Not too crazy about that Bok team, by the way. And so that's definitely a possibility. And they could move to number 1 in the world. But New Zealand have lost 3 this year, twice to South Africa, once to Argentina. And this is what's really cool right now. This year, is we got these teams where rugby is so exciting is that we got these top five teams: France, England, South Africa, Ireland, and New Zealand, and Argentina right there. Is that they can beat any one of those teams, or they can beat any one of each other on any day. So fantastic game of rugby to watch as a neutral. I don't know what it was like for you guys who are Irish or All Blacks, but thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for the great game. And love to know your thoughts. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a beautiful weekend. Enjoy the other rugby. Lots of rugby. Okay. Cheers, man.